Should gospel artists charge for performing? Picture this. Your church is organizing a powerful worship event and you reach out to a well-known gospel artist, but then you get their response. I'd love to come, but my performance fee is $5,000. Suddenly, the room goes silent. Should gospel musicians be charging for ministry? Now, this is one of the most debated topics in Christian circles. Some say, freely you have received, so freely give. While others argue, that a worker is worthy of his wages. So, both quotations in the scriptures. So, which is it? Is charging for a gospel ministration or performance wrong, or is it simply a fair way for artists to sustain themselves and continue in ministry? Stick around, because today we're diving deep into these conversations. We're going to be using biblical references, some historical context and real life examples that will kind of challenge how we think about this topic. The founder of the Discoveries and Dialogue YouTube channel, you can subscribe to this channel. So why this topic? All right, let's be honest. This discussion isn't new. Churches, pastors, and gospel musicians have been debating this for years. It's kind of on social media now, and I got a friend of mine that says, IT, why don't you record a video about this? So, on one side, people say gospel music is ministry and not business, so artists shouldn't charge. They also say singing for God should be a calling and not a career. Worship is about souls and not sales. On the other side, some people argue gospel artists also have bills to pay, just like everyone else. Who pays for the studio time? Who pays for the travel time? Who pays for sound? Who pays for all the equipment? They cost money. Some even come up with, even pastors receive honor. Why should musicians not? The way I like to answer my questions, I like to look at it from what does the Bible say. All right? So let's break this down biblically, because that's what truly matters. Number one, it says, freely you have received, freely give. Matthew 10:8. Jesus told his disciples to heal the sick, to cleanse the lepers, to raise the dead, and cast out devils. And he says, freely you have received, freely give. Does this mean gospel artists shouldn't charge at all? Okay, some say yes, because the gospel is a gift and ministry and shouldn't come with a price tag. That's some people's view, which I've mentioned already. But I want you to, let's look at the second perspective. He said in 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 18, Luke 10:7, he said, the worker is also worthy of his wages. Okay, and that first verse I quoted wasn't even directly talking to musicians, but was talking about healing the sick and all of that. So in Luke 10:7, it says, do not muzzle the ox which is treading out the grain, and the worker deserves his wages. So these are some of the verses that I've seen on social media that are used in either supporting the idea or coming against the idea. So let's think about it this way, right? Pastors, sound engineers, and even event organizers often receive compensation for their roles in ministry. So why is it controversial when a gospel musician asks for a fee? We have pastors who even put themselves on salaries in today's world. Okay, where is the foundation of this? Levites, for example, let's look at Levites in the Old Testament. Levites in the Old Testament were supported financially. Numbers chapter 18 verse 21. He said, I give to the Levites all the tithes in Israel as their inheritance in return for the work they do while serving at the tent of meeting. So God is not against financial rewards when you serve in ministry. He's not against it. However you want to put it as salary, is not against it, or as charge is not against it. So in the Old Testament, musicians and temple workers were supported by the tithe and the offerings. This shows you that God's servants have always been financially sustained by the ministry. But does that mean that gospel artists today can use this basis to charge for their performances? Let's use real life examples. A gospel artist, I'm trying to record a song now and I'm going through the cost, could spend about $3,000 on recording and production of a very good music. Spends another $500 on marketing, spends $1,000 plus on travel to even the church events that invited them. So if they perform for free every time, how will they sustain their ministry? If gospel music is a ministry, are you telling me that it should be completely free? If gospel musicians shouldn't charge, should we stop paying pastors or church workers who also work in ministry? Or why is it okay for Christian authors to sell their books? They write their books in the name of God, in the name of Christ. At least it's a way of expression of creativity, but they sell it Why don't they give those books for free? Or because it's tangible, you can touch the books, it seems that there's a cost to the book. But when it comes to gospel music ministry, do you feel the music that is being sung, the back end people, the instruments used, doesn't come at a cost? Gospel music is as much of a ministry as it is also a profession. So charging for performances isn't wrong, but the heart behind it matters. Churches should respect artists' time and efforts, while artists should also remain mindful that their first goal is to minister. I know there have been extremes, but there are also extremes in many other things in churches. So if you're a church, churches should have a budget for guest artists. If not, you don't have to invite a guest artist to any of your events. You don't have to. Gospel musicians, which I've seen some of them do, can also have both paid performances and free ministry events. Okay? And some gospel artists has made it their personal devotion not to ask for money from ministries. It's more personal than biblical, because there is a biblical foundation for the supporting of people who minister in the gospel. So honorariums for those ministers is a strict alternative for the administration. It means they don't directly ask for money. However, the churches inviting them are already trained to honor every minister that comes to their church. So one of the biblical foundation for this is how the Levites were treated under the law. Because they served, God made sure that they were compensated, not in heaven, but in earth, for what they are doing. Okay, this is just my little contribution on it. If this video made you think, please like, subscribe, and turn on notification bells for more faith-based discussions. Thank you for listening.